Welcome, and thank you very much for joining us today. Today we have as a guest with us Tina Edmundson, who is the Chief Marketing Officer of Marriott. And she is joining my colleague and I. I'm here together with Raghu Iyengar, who is an esteemed professor at the Wharton School and the director of the Wharton Customer Analytics. And I'm a professor at the marketing department here at Wharton. And as I say, we have Tina Edmundson who is with us. Tina, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So we've got a few things that we'd like to try and understand from you. I can't imagine that there's been any company that has been affected more by this pandemic than Marriott. And so we'd like to try and understand that. But let's begin with some understanding about you. And if you could tell us something about your background and how long you've been in your current position.
So I've been with Marriott for about 12 years now. I joined, actually, not surprisingly, from Starwood Hotels, where I was for some 17 or 18 years prior to that. So I've spent the entirety of my career in hospitality, and all of it with Starwood and Marriott. And so it was wonderful for me when Marriott actually acquired Starwood back in 2016, because it felt a little bit like coming home for me, because those are brands that I also loved. So it's been an interesting and fun ride, but I have to say that this last year has been, I'll use the cliche of the year, it has been unprecedented, right? Mm-hmm. It's been devastating, actually, for our industry, not just for Marriott, as you know.
Sure. So one of the things I want to ask, since you mentioned Starwood, and actually, I'm very much into branding and the use of a brand as an umbrella, but as well as your different brands. And obviously, you know, you have a whole host of different brands that fall under your domain. I'm curious of whether or not this pandemic has affected all of the brands equally, or are there some brands that have been differentially affected? I know you said it's affected the entire industry, but I'm wondering if there's been any difference across those.
So it has been different, Dave, in different parts of the world, and it has affected brands differently. Mm-hmm. I will tell you, in the US, where we still have the bulk of our portfolio, particularly in the select serve space, we have seen the select brands, and within the select brands, the extended stay brands have performed the best. Mm-hmm. And that has been largely due to a lot of drive market business. People have, in the pandemic been afraid to fly, which I totally get, and they've been wanting to stay a little bit close to home. Sure. I would say shortly after the Q2, maybe at the end of the summer, when people started venturing out, people needed a change of scenery. They just do. And, but they wanted to stay close, and they wanted to avoid unnecessary risk. And so it felt to them like getting in your car and driving somewhere still gave you some of the benefit of being able to travel, whether it was going to a national park or going to some remote location or going to a beach. Mm-hmm. And so we saw, a fair amount of business happily in the extended stay product. And then I would say in select serve in general. The other thing, the other sort of phenomena we've seen in other parts of the world, as well as in the US, is at the very high end. So from a luxury perspective, the very affluent have also traveled a fair bit, and they have the means, as an example, to rent out entire floors and rent out, if a hotel has villas, to rent out a villa or a couple of villas, so you can still, have the social distancing and the isolation, but still have the change of scenery. The specifics, Dave, though, depend on which country, which region, sure, and what the consumer desires and travel patterns are.
A great point, Tina, and especially I think when you said before, clearly things were unprecedented. It's been a very tough time. But during the time, have you changed the way, let's say, you're spending your marketing budget, how you are interacting with your stakeholders? What have been some changes that are salient that you feel also might go moving forward?
Yeah, really important question, Raghu. And I would say, primarily, it's interesting because you'd never think in a pre-COVID environment, you'd never think of marketing as communicating cleanliness. You would never think that you would have taken for granted that people would have had confidence. And I would say one of the big changes that we made right at the beginning was one from a tone perspective. It is really important that we were being very conscious and very careful about what we're saying and how we're saying it. The second thing I would say is that people wanted to ensure that they wanted to have confidence. Confidence was the most important thing that we could have communicated, particularly in the early stages of the pandemic. We did a ton of focus groups, I have to tell you, and it's interesting because we asked customers and we asked travel partners and we asked meeting planners about confidence, and they told us, hey, this is when it really pays to have a trusted brand, and people know Marriott and people trust Marriott, and so you don't have to worry about that. But we like the reinforcement of the confidence, and so I think that has been a major change. And I would say that maybe the need for the confidence communication may wane over time, particularly as we get into, hey, there's going to be a vaccine and it'll be a post-COVID environment, and what will that be? But I think consumers' expectations will remain heightened in terms of, their wanting to ensure an environment that is clean, that they feel secure, and that they feel like they can trust. And then from a marketing strategies perspective, Raghu, I would say, it was important for us, particularly, again, the different stages of what we have collectively been through over the last 9 months. But in the early stages, we did not want to come out and say, oh, go travel, because no, that's just not right. There's no amount of wanting to do it that makes it right. And so that was really about making sure that we were communicating, or that we took really steps in making sure that we were providing rooms for the first responders, or that we were doing things that felt good to us, that felt good to our associates, that felt good to our stakeholders. And then when people were just tired of being at home, we wanted travel to be a little bit of a relief virtually. We wanted to inspire travel, and we wanted to say, hey, whenever you're ready, we are here. And so, again, what we were communicating and how we were doing that, we actually did some work with our retail stores. So we have Marriott boutiques, and you can't go to a hotel, so bring the hotel to you. And you can buy a bedding, or you can buy a candle. So it makes you reminisce about your travel, and makes you feel like, gives you it's more about sort of tapping into the emotion of what you want to do, and sort of bringing you back to that place, at least mentally, if you couldn't be there physically. And then again, as we got, further into it, for those who wanted to travel to beaches or to mountain locations or whatever, again, communicating the confidence and making sure that we were actually delivering upon that, right? So when a customer actually came to the hotel, that they were satisfied with the experience, and that the other thing that we saw is that once travelers had their first trip, they were much more likely to have more trips, because they had conquered they had confidence. Whether or not the trip went exactly perfectly right, they felt like, okay, I've done that, I can do this again. So that was important as well.
Yeah, you gave them confidence that you were taking care and being very cautious, and they could be safe staying in any of your hotels. And I get that. I like this notion of thinking about relief. I think what I'm going to do is put a mint on my pillow tonight, just so I can have some sense that that's working. You had also commented about the need to change venue. I sort of think of it as going from the study to the kitchen as my change of venue, but I understand most real people, want to venture out some and not feel within the confines of their house. I'm sort of, you mentioned, on the horizon, we see the vaccine rolling out. And I'm curious, as we see that, sort of how you're gearing up for when people start to feel more confident that, I mean, right now we're in the rages of all the spread. But I'm wondering how you're gearing up and if you're doing anything different in anticipation of when it is that things start to open up, or are you still holding back a little bit until we get further down, and at what point it will be that you start opening up a little bit more?
So I will say, Dave, that most, at the height of the pandemic, we had many hotels closed. I want to say we had some 25% of our hotels closed. I'm happy to say that right now, majority of our hotels are open. I think 94% of all of our hotels are open today. Wow. So hotels are certainly open. We have given, the amenities in the hotels may be still closed, right? So depending on, and it's all governed primarily by local jurisdiction, right? So depending on what the regulations are in different parts of the world and within a country, in different states or in different regions, food and beverage may be open, may not be open. Pools may be open or may not be open. Again, depending on what is safe. And that is our highest priority, right? The safety of our associates and safety of our guests. So looking forward to the vaccine, we want to make sure that we continue with all of the safety protocols because we think that will be important. It's not going to be a flick of a switch, right? It's going to take time for the vaccine to be distributed, and people will ramp up travel, I think, a bit slower. It's not going to be one day that everyone decides, okay, I'm going to go out and travel. So we are holding back a bit, and and it's interesting that every day there's something that changes the world. Up till last week we were all super excited about, yay, there's a vaccine, right? So excited, and then was it today or yesterday? Now there's a variant in the UK of the vaccine that spreads more easily. We don't know what's going to happen with that. And so it is really about being, nimble and sort of taking it, I would say, one day at a time or 1 week at a time as we either get new or more information.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Go ahead, Dave.
No, go ahead.
So Tina, I wanted to build up on your point, and we've had some conversations with other participants as well about how important brand is in today's environment. And many have suggested, just like you were suggesting earlier, that if anything, this is the time where perhaps brand is even more important. And so perhaps spending on making sure that people value that brand, to make sure that people understand what the brand stands for, perhaps will not just be important today, but perhaps more important once the pandemic is done and people now have to evaluate what brands do they really care about. Would you agree with that? How do you kind of think about that?
Yeah, I do agree with that. I think that the value of brands, and particularly the value of the confidence and the trust in the brand, tends to be more important during these critical moments, right? Where it becomes a necessity rather than a luxury. And people want to know that, hey, I'm going to go there or I'm going to stay there because I have confidence in that brand because of what they stand for. Marriott's been in business for 93 years. There's value to that.
Sure.
And the value is reinforced when you actually have a stay at a property and the brand promise is lived up to, if you will. So yeah, I believe in that, and I think that will continue to be important in a post-pandemic world.
Yeah, so I'm really curious, just trying to think about, what changes it is that you've made that, in particular, I'm thinking, one of the challenges over the last decade for the hotel industry has been, for lack of a better term, the Airbnbs of the world. And I've seen Marriott going into some of that space. And part of that is, you're not being in a big building with lots of other people, but you've got a smaller space that you happen to be renting where you might be more isolated. Is that something, actually tell us a little bit about what it is that you've been doing with that, and then how you see that sort of going forward as we look ahead.
Yeah, so Homes and Villas by Marriott International is the brand that we launched, in the home rental space. And we decided, Dave, not to necessarily compete with Airbnb because we don't do home sharing. It's not, you cannot rent a room in a house. These are professionally managed homes that are part of our system, right? And so rather than offer you millions of choices, we have curated a list of homes and castles and villas and apartments that are available to you, and we have deliberately said that they are basically in the premium and luxury space. We're not in the economy space. And the reason that we went into this area, Dave, is that even for the most loyal Marriott Bonvoy member, there are times when you want a home and you don't want a hotel. And so when you think about your travel experience or Raghu's travel experience over the course of a year, you may stay 75% of your time in a hotel, but there's some portion of your stay that for whatever reason, either you're going to a place where there's not hotels easily available, or you're going to a bachelor party, or you are going with 3 or 4 other families and you want to have the living space, or whatever the reason may be. And we wanted to make sure that for our Marriott Bonvoy travelers, that we had accommodated for all of their travel needs. And this was an important travel need. And so we said, hey, let's make sure that we are providing a service by curating homes that our members could avail of, and they can earn and redeem in those locations as well. And so it's exciting for us because we started with some, 2,000 locations, homes, and we're up to some 25,000, at this point, and we'll continue to grow. We'll continue to grow because we are seeing a very good uptake on those.
That's great.
So it's been great, and our Bonvoy members love it.
Yeah.
It gives them a reason to sort of stay within our ecosystem.
Indeed. So Tina, I think building on that point, one of the things, again, perhaps the homes and villas, especially during this kind of last few months, may have seen an uptick. I wanted to see the way you're perhaps using digital and things of that nature to convey all the opportunities, alternatives available to people. Have they changed as well, in the sense that what you were conveying through digital, how much you're relying on digital? Do you see that sticking even after the pandemic is done? Because people's habits may have changed in terms of how they want to get information from you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that has been probably the most noticeable change, is that people are so, people have advanced so quickly into the digital space, and the adoption has been almost instantaneous, just because people, you don't have an option anymore. So everything from, mobile check-in to using your phone as a key, right? Mobile key, to guest services, to certainly, booking on the web was always a thing, but now how do we communicate, to your point, how do we communicate what is open and what is not open? Excuse me. on the website. And so we actually created a module that has a link off from your confirmation. So once you get you booked your reservation, you get a confirmation. There's a link that says what to expect, and when you click on it for that particular property, and every property has to fill out their own. The pool is closed, the fitness is closed, but the restaurants are open, or whatever, whatever we are trying, or hey, regulations require that no outlet is open. It's all available for guests. And we know that guests are looking for that information because they want to understand what their experience is going to be once they are physically at the hotel. I don't see that going away. I think people, people like that. I think they love so much of it just psychologically is being in control, because you now have control of your trip, of your experience. You know where to go. You're not waiting on somebody to tell you. And I don't see that going away.
Tina, that's fascinating. And what I have witnessed is, I think that Marriott has been at the forefront of some of that development. And I think that's great. I'm really curious, building on that, as to what it is you've had to do internally in terms of building up capability to understand what people do, and basically taking advantage of the data and then being able to translate that into offers for the individual guest. And so the question is really one more of internal capabilities and what it is that it's forced you to do.
Right at the beginning, Dave, of the pandemic, we actually furloughed a vast majority of our staff, as you can imagine, just because the hotels emptied out. Internally at the corporate office, we formed a tiger team of sorts and quickly realized what we needed to do in order to get through this. One of the things that we realized that we needed to have our finger on the pulse on was consumer insights. And so we have a consumer insights department or group that sourced both public and syndicated information on what was going on at large and what was going on with the traveling public or would-be traveling public. We also have a Marriott Bond Board community called POV, and we actually ask them questions. And so it's an online community that if we're contemplating something new, or we want to test something or run an idea past them, it's thousands of members that want to share their opinions because they care, they're interested. Travel is fun. I mean, any way you look at it, people just love to travel, right? Whether you travel twice a year, you travel for business, 30 times a year, they want to share their opinions. And so we find that sort of repository of, information really, really helpful. And then from there, we recently talked about, we knew that people were traveling and schools were not in session, and so you could be anywhere. So this whole notion of you can work from anywhere was born. And we talked to this community and said, would you work from anywhere? And what do you need if you wanted to work from anywhere? And got some really great insights. And then we did a POC, and we launched it, and we said, let's see how this works. People would want to stay for just come in for a day. You live in New York City, your apartment's small, you need to get away because you can't work, right? But you still have to work. You can come to any of our hotels for a day, and we coined it day pass. Or if you wanted to stay overnight and sort of check in as early as 9 o'clock in the morning, check out as late as 6 the following day, we call that a stay pass. And then if you wanted to go away for a week, to a beach with your kids and have them, do their homework or do their classes online, and you work, and we call that play pass. So we had a day pass, stay pass, and a play pass, and we launched all those. And that is a lot of listening to consumers, understanding what they were looking for, and then converting that into a business opportunity and saying, okay, from a hotel perspective, this is what you have to provide to customers looking for these experiences.
Oh, great point, Tina. As we are wrapping up, just love to hear your thoughts on to other decision makers. What will be your advice that, how should they stay the course? There've been, lots of companies have gone through very tough hurdles, but you've learned a lot. You're doing some amazing things. What might be some advice for other decision makers?
I would say keeping the consumer at the center of what you're doing and never losing sight of that, because at the end of the day, how you treat your customers in hard times is more important almost than in good times. And, I would say staying focused on that, you can't really go wrong.
Wonderful.
Spoken like a true marketer, right?
No, absolutely. You were talking to our hearts, so I appreciated that for sure. This has been great. We really appreciate you joining us. I am so impressed by the innovations that you are doing and Marriott is doing. So congratulations on that. As I say, it's been tough times, but clearly you have taken them on head on. And so congratulations on that. And from both Raghu and myself, thank you. And thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. It's been fun.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Take care.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.